Hi guys, it's Erin from Ginger's Florals. Today, I thought it would be a good day to show you my favorite foliages to use this time of year. It's the middle of July, the heat is roaring, and all these guys are doing fantastic right now. They're getting a couple of them are cooler season flowers or foliages that are getting to the end of their life, but all in all, they look beautiful and I love to use them this time of year. I do want to say, so every season has its best foliages. My early spring foliages are usually tree branches. I've talked about it before, we have loads and loads of wild cherry trees and alders and all kinds of shrubs that just grow wild around the edges of our property. And I will cut the heck out of those in the spring because that's pretty much all we have. And then in the fall, later summer, end of August, September, my favorite foliages are more darker colored. Generally, the red leaf hibiscus, the mahogany splendor, is by far my favorite. That time of year, it's just perfect for all of the fall, late summer into fall bouquets. But for right now, I'm going to go through, I think I have 5 different varieties or 5 different types of foliages that I just adore. There's lots of them out there. You can do whatever floats your boat. I just wanted to share what I like to use. First things first, Bells of Ireland. These guys, oops, they're getting away from me. So first things first is Bells of Ireland. These are generally a cooler season plant, but this year, normally I will sow some in the fall and let them kind of like a biennial, it's a hardy annual. So in this zone, it's zone 8B. I can sow these in the fall and have them earlier in the season. This season, I sowed them super late winter, early spring, and put them in the ground, and it's middle of July. Now I'm getting them up to cut. So these, last year I missed them all together. I was out of town when they came to life. But these are such an interesting shape that unless you're a florist or you're in the flower business in some shape, you generally don't know what they are. And they smell like cucumbers, at least to me. Some people have described them differently, but for me, they smell like cucumbers. These grow in kind of a bushy sort of plant, and you can pinch these and they'll shoot out additional stems. But for me, obviously, I didn't pinch any of these, and this is one stem. I can cut these back like I did here, and then later on in the season, heading into the late fall, if they're good and healthy and you keep them fertilized and watered, they'll do this again. They'll shoot up more bloom spikes in the later part of the season. At least I have, in my experience, had that happen. So these little bells, they're Bells of Ireland, little green bells. These, it takes quite a while for them to form these. They just look like little green shoots coming up with these little these leaves, but then you'll start to see the little bells forming, and once they get stiff and these bells are up and full, you can cut them anytime after that. They will, like I said, they're kind of a cooler season. They prefer cooler weather than we're getting now. It's the 80s, upper 80s and 90s for the foreseeable future. So they're gonna go quickly. They're starting to turn yellow now, so I'll cut all of these, everything I have left for this weekend's bouquets. But these, they're cooler season, but they're pretty sturdy. They don't wilt generally ever. They are somewhat geotropic though, so you wanna make sure that when you stand them up in your bucket, they're upright, otherwise they'll bend and curve. Florists, a lot of times though, if you're growing these to sell wholesale or to a florist, they don't mind the bendy and the curves. It makes for really great interest in floristry. So yeah, this is probably, it's one of my favorites this time of year. Like I said, this is going to the end of its season, but it's really fantastic and people really don't know what it is if they're not, unless they're in the florist industry. So they gravitate towards these at the farmer's market. So that's one. Another favorite that I have is is a woody stem. So this in particular is 9-bark. 9-bark grows fantastic in my zone. We have native 9-bark. This one I think is a proven winners. It's a lemony yellow. It's a really bright chartreusey green, almost yellow in the spring. I know not everybody has the room to have shrubs in their gardens, but if you can make one fit, if you got room for one, remember that if you're cutting from it, they'll never get to their full size. And the earlier you put them into your garden, the faster you'll have stems, because you won't want to be cutting on them when they're small plants. You want to let them get pretty big. But these are go-to standbys, and I don't have to plant them every year. They hold up incredibly well in a vase, better than most foliages. The thing you want to make sure that you do, the thing you want to make sure of before you cut them for a bouquet is to make sure the stems are sturdy. This is all new growth for this year, and if I cut it earlier in the season, it would flop, because they need to be able to get rigid, kind of like mint. Oh, I didn't grab any mint. That's another really fantastic one. But you do have to make sure to give it a chance. You either cut it when it's blooming, because 9-barks will bloom on old wood, so you can cut those stems and they'll be good and sturdy early in the season. But if you're cutting the new growth like I like to do, you do want to wait until it's midsummer when the stems are getting rigid. But these are always fantastic. Some of my favorite 9-barks, I've got this lemony one. I have the native dark green. I also have a Diablo that is dark foliage. It's burgundy sort of color. There's lots of different varieties of 9-bark. Another good one is Forsythia. The stems from Forsythia are really sturdy. And you could use lilac stems. You could use cherry tree stems. Anything. I have viburnum that I'll cut and use. Any kind of woody stem tends to be good and sturdy in a vase. One that I would recommend not using, and if you're in this area, you may have some wild in your garden, is elderberry. They just simply they'll never hydrate. At least I haven't found a way to do it. If somebody out there knows, let me know. But because they grow prolifically around here, but they don't hydrate and they always flop, and I've never been able to make them really work in a bouquet. They're beautiful and I want them to work, and when they're on the plant, they look like they would be perfect in a bouquet, but they just don't work for me. So, okay, that's the second one I wanted to talk about, is woody stems. Really anything that you think is beautiful, give it a cut, give it a try, see if it'll hold up. Most of them will, and these are one of my absolute favorites for this time of year to put into bouquets. Another one, this third one, is actually Amaranth. Amaranth, this one is coral fountains. I love this. It's so pretty, and you can save the seed really easily, by the way. Most people grow Amaranth for the blooms, basically. This particular one, coral fountains, and I have a green tails that have this kind of shape, but I also grow it for the foliage. I don't cut all these off. If I was going to do some big arrangement and I wanted just this, of course I would. But in a bouquet, in a market bouquet specifically, this foliage is great. And depending on the variety, the autumn touch that I have and the green spike or the red spike, they have big full foliage that it kind of acts like a woody shrub, and it fills the bouquet beautifully with the added bonus of the flower. So my favorites, like I said, the ones that I'm growing right now, Autumn Touch. It has bicolor blooms. It's more of a spike shape on the bloom. It doesn't do this drapey thing, but they're brown and green on the same flower. The red spike, which, as the name would suggest, it's red, but it's kind of a burgundy, almost really dark pink is the stem and the foliage. And then the bloom itself is a spike it's that deep dark burgundy. The green tails, which is just like this one, similar, slightly lighter colored leaves, and then a really bright, almost grassy green bloom that has this shape, this draping shape. This one is fantastic in bouquets. People, it seems to be a theme with me, if you haven't noticed in my book, in my videos, that I like the interesting, different type of flowers that draw people in, and this is definitely one of them. This is, again, another one of my favorites foliages, especially this time of year. And these are just getting going. They'll be good all the way through the summer. I did do a succession sowing of these. I sowed some early in the season and got them going in the field. And then I just direct sowed some recently, and they're already a foot tall. Okay, the next one I've got, this, like the Bells of Ireland, is coming to the end of its cycle. It likes the cooler weather. There's not as much that likes this heat. But this is honeywort or cerinthe. If I just cut these, so they're kind of wilty. Normally when you cut them, you want to wrap them straight up with paper and put them in your cooler and let them hydrate that way, and they'll stand straight up. But this is just so I can show you what they look like. But these, I know I've talked about these before, but there's just something to me that's magical about these flowers, this foliage, this deep kind of blue-green color, and the tips of the leaves are even darker than the base of them. It's kind of the grassy green, light green stem, and then these blooms that come on this plant. They're purple and blue, and in the sun they sort of shimmer. They're really amazing, and they make fantastic foliage. They add a decent amount of bulk. I cut some side shoots, so these aren't as big, but they can have some decent bulk and really fill out a bouquet. And again, as with most things, it's running theme here, they're interesting, and a lot of people don't grow these around here. They're really easy to grow. They like our weather. I struggled in the past growing them, but I think that my soil just wasn't quite up to par yet, but I've got it there now, and they're crazy huge. I have so many of them. I'm gonna be cutting these pretty quick. I don't cut all of them though, because it's sort of like the amaranth. These are some of the easiest plants to save seed from, and they're kind of expensive seed, so it's definitely worth it, for me anyways, to save the seed from these honeywort. I will show you in a few weeks, a month, maybe a month and a half, when I've let some of these go to seed, what it looks like and how easy it is to actually save the seed. The bees adore these guys. They're in there all the time. You have to kind of shoo them away before you cut the stems. But they're super easy to grow or save seed from. They're beautiful. The color is really unusual with the different shades of green and blue and purple. They're kind of silvery. There's so many different colors all at once, and they go so well in a variety of colors. I wouldn't put it with maybe a bright red, but any purples, pinks, or soft yellows, anything like that, these will be gorgeous with. Oh, lots and lots of peaches look really great. So that's honeywort or cerinthe. Again, sorry, picture them standing upright, because they will once they hydrate. And then the last one that I wanted to talk about is basil. Same thing, I haven't let this hydrate, but basil or any herb, as I said earlier, I forgot I was gonna get mint, oregano, Greek oregano specifically, and basil make fantastic foliages in bouquets. You can see this one. This is a Thai basil, the purple stems, the dark green leaves, and these little bloom spikes. Once they start to put out their blooms, this is when you want to cut them. Before that, they're going to do this floppy thing and they'll never recover. This one, I'll put it back in the bucket, and by the morning it will all be standing straight up. No problem. Zero concern with basil not hydrating. It always does. And I've even had it root in my vases. So basil, most mint, I really like apple mint, pineapple mint, and even common mint is really, really good. A lot of people worry about putting mint in their gardens, especially around here with the kind of moisture that we get. that they'll run over everything and just take over. There's a couple different things that you can do for that. One is just to plant it in a pot. What you do have to be mindful that because mint does like to clump so fast, that if you have it in a pot, you can start with a tiny little plant in a big pot and it'll be happy for a while. But even then, it will fill in that entire pot, and you will need to either repot it into something bigger or cut it up and repot it, just a small amount of it. I grow it in I do have some in a pot up on the deck just so that it's easy access for when we're using it culinarily. But the mint, I have mint in several places around the garden. And because we cut so severely on it, it doesn't take over anything. I've actually had more of that being a problem with my oregano than I have with mint, which is funny. Mint is notorious, oregano is not, but my oregano goes crazy. The good thing about oregano, along with, well, I should finish with my basil. The other thing about basil is the scent. Obviously, basil, any kind of basil is going to smell amazing. There's a couple varieties specifically that I like the best, though. This one is the Thai basil. I really like the scent of this one. It's kind of spicy, not spicy, peppery maybe. It's not your classic Genovese basil scent. It's better. And the other one is the lemon basil. Mrs. Burns lemon basil. You can get the seed on Johnny Seed. That is my favorite by far. Like, far and away, there is no other herb that smells as good as that one. It has that classic sweet sort of Italian basil scent, but then you add lemon to it. So it screams Italy for sure. Lemon and basil, it's like a cocktail in a plant. It just smells so good. I literally will take a handful, cut it out of the fields, and just have it with me and smell it all day long. Well, while I'm out in the field, I will just walk around and smell it. I'll look like a weirdo. I don't care. It's so good. So basil, mint, and oregano. The thing about oregano, they're not as full as a basil or a mint, but the blooms on them will be. They get pretty good and wide. The mint is sort of just a spike. The basil's just a spike, but the oregano kind of, it almost makes that disc shape when it gets mature. And I love that. It's not for the color of the blooms. It still looks like a foliage. It's just a different shape, and it works really well. I like using herbs. A lot of people will stop and because they like the basil, they can smell it from a distance, especially if it's a warm day. But people will ask, like, is that basil? And yeah, it is. Or is that oregano? People recognize it, and it makes a lot of people giggle, and they love it. And they're so easy to grow, at least in our climate, in this zone, and with the moisture that we get, they do really well. So I think that's it. That's what I wanted to talk about. I wanted a lot of people struggle with balancing how much foliage and flowers and filler flowers, focal flowers, accent pieces that they grow in their fields. The rule of thumb would be, 40 to 50% foliages, and the rest of it being all of your flowers, all the different types of flowers. I sort of cheat that. I don't do quite that much in my annuals because I also have shrubs and trees and everything else around my property. So when I walk you guys through the fields, you won't see that I have 10 rows of foliages. I have 4 rows of foliages out of the 21 that I have. But that's, like I said, that's because I have a lot of shrubs and woody shrubs and trees and greenery that I can get elsewhere. Okay, so again, like I said, I just wanted to share my favorites, especially this time of year. It's harder to find if you didn't plan well enough for them. They may be more difficult to find in your garden and in your shrubs. A lot of the trees, if you're using trees mostly, the leaves get too big this time of year to really use effectively. Okay guys, I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope maybe that you learned something. It gives you an inspiration to plan for next season what you're going to grow, and give you thoughts to start thinking about what kind of woody shrubs you might like. 9-bark, weigela, all kinds of stuff. Even butterfly bush. It's a weed around here, but it's a really good foliage. I don't grow it ever for the blooms. It's just not something that I enjoy because it's literally everywhere, but it does really good as a foliage in your garden. So woody shrubs, herbs, mint, oregano, basil, bells of Ireland, amaranth, and honeywort or cerinthe. Give them all a try. You won't be disappointed, and I will show you soon how to save seed from some of these plants. Okay guys, thanks for watching. Bye.